So once we connect to Mongo, we should start actually creating some data, doing some CRUD stuff. So the first thing you have to do is you have to create some type of shapes that we actually want to add data for. And those shapes, again, are going to be like collections, right? So we talked about collections. We created one in the shell. Now we're going to create one here using Mongoose. And again, it's pretty straightforward because we are using something like Mongoose. So the way you create a collection is going to be something like this. So if I wanted to create a collection called student, all I would have to use is the new mongoose.schema, and that's going to take an object. So if I say new mongoose.schema, this is telling Mongoose that, hey, I'm making a new schema. And by itself, a schema doesn't do anything. It's just like instructions on field names and types and validations. It doesn't actually do anything in the database. It doesn't create a collection. It's just instructions for a collection that we have to create later. So we're going to create that schema first. It's very much the same way if you created a schema for a table or a model in Postgres or SQL. Very much the same. So I'm just going to keep it very minimal and say I'm just going to have a student who has a first name and its type is string. And what's pretty sweet here is that we can use the built-in JavaScript primitives as the typings. So string is a global in JavaScript because that's a primitive in JavaScript. It's a global class. So we can just use the primitives to figure it out because Mongo is based off JavaScript. And that's pretty cool. We don't have to use any of the libraries or use a an actual string value like string. You can just say string. And it knows that you want to use a string. So that's pretty legit. I kind of like that. That's very easy to get started. So once we have our schema, the next thing that we need to do is convert the schema over to what we call a Mongoose model or a Mongo model. And then that model is going to create a collection for us. So the way you do that is also pretty simple with Mongoose. All you'd have to do is use mongoose.model. You pass in the name of your collection as the first argument. And what's important here is the pattern that the community uses for this is that you use a lowercase name for the collection and don't pluralize it because Mongoose is going to, or Mongo is going to pluralize it for you. So whatever I type in here is going to be pluralized. So if I type in student, the actual name of the collection is going to be students, lowercase. So that's why it's just keep it singular, keep it lowercase, and then don't be surprised when you go look in the database. It's like it's going to be pluralized. It's going to be students and it's going to be lowercase. The reason I say keep it like this is because once we start doing relations and referring to things, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with if it's all constant. So just say student, and then the next thing you want to do is just pass in the schema as the second argument. And now you have a model. That's going to return a model, so you want to go ahead and say that in a variable. Or you can just call that student with a capital S. The convention in the community is use capital letters for models. So student with a capital S, that's going to be the model. Now I have a reference to a model called student, which is going to represent a collection. So now I can save students using this student model against the student collection with just these few lines of code. So again, in just these few lines of code, we were able to connect to a database. We have the logic for it. We didn't actually connect yet because we got to run this function. We created a schema for a student, and then we registered that schema as a collection called student, and it returned us a model that we can interact with inside of our application.